I was really intimidated by this, but it was about 100 times easier than I thought, and I don't do much with my car. Please be careful. Get yourself a manual, really important. Everything you really need to know is in there. It's just not detailed for the do-it-yourselfer. You get up under that hood, and you do not need to raise the car. There's enough clearance under the Eagle to get to it. You exit through the top, and you go through the bottom. That shock is covered by a coil. There's no bringing it down. I chose KYB. Very affordable. Did the whole car for less than $100. The instructions that come with the shock are pretty miserable. I don't know what these pictograms mean. I just go to a ribbon cutting at a homeless shelter. Don't know what that means. And the all-seeing eye of Sauron is always watching you. But do put in one shock before you put in the other. Complete each side. There's the bolts that already exist. These are the nuts you're going to remove from underneath there. Choose the right ones. There's the top bushings with the kit. There's the bottom bushings with the kit. Everything you need is right there. Grab your purple socket and loosen those. It was really loose in a good way. It had been properly torqued by the previous owner. And please be careful which nuts you remove. You don't want your car to explode on you. Now, after you pull those bolts out, you'll be left with some bushings. Hang on to those. Make sure you save them just in case. And then pull off the mounts over on top of the shock towers. And then you can release that bolt pretty easily. Pull it off. That exposes the shock. That is one rusty mount, and I am going to scrape and paint that. Now let's see what the original shock looked like. A little crusty like everything else under the car, but it was still operating pretty well. I'm going to take that shock and just make sure that it aligns with the other shock that I bought. Make sure it's all lined up. And down in there under the tower, it's crusty, but I'm not going to deal with that. But I am going to go ahead and deal with that mount. I got some special rust preventative paint. I shot that a few times, and then I covered it with an automotive grade matte. Clean that tower, put a little vinegar in there to get rid of the rust. You don't want to keep that on there. You want to rinse it real good, but it exposed raw metal. And then I just dabbed a little bit of that rust preventer on there. There's that new mount. I've got it all hooked up to the shock. Put the grommets on, and I'm going to slide it right down in that tower and make sure it fits. Aligning those holes was a little bit tricky, but once I got to it, pop in everything, tighten it up. Make sure you torque it according to the book. That's important too, not too tight. And there you have the bottom on. Now I press down that mount. I reattach the bolts and nuts. And I torqued those properly after I tightened them. And of course, dealing with the top of the shock. The other tower, you pull off that mount, you're going to be amazed. Stamped in there is the date that your car was manufactured. Let's move on to the rear. It's a little bit different. It's almost like it's installed upside down where the two bolts goes up top and the single bolt goes on the bottom. It's crusty up there as well, and it's going to rain down all kinds of grime and grease to you. There's more room up there than you would think. It's just hard to reach. I put my hand all the way up there. I got my small socket with an extension on there, but on the other side I had to pop off the extension, and I just went with my different wrench. Pulling that off, it did not need penetrant, but I'd shot it, and also the bottom was fairly easy to undo too. I did not need a breaker bar, which I was glad of that. Taking off those bolts. There's a lock washer. Remember that when you reassemble it, even though you get the new hardware. Pull off that shock. There's the bolt. I really need to deal with those leaf springs, don't I? So here's the shock, and again, it's rusty up top. I'm going to deal with that mount as well. While I've got the paint, and while I've got the scrapers, and while I've got the tool, I'm going to deal with that. Now I am going to check out that shock again. I'm going to undo that bolt with the 9/16. I'm going to remove that, and I'm going to scrape that really well. There it is, all finished and ready to roll. Pop that back on there. There's the new shock. It's got good extension. It feels really good. Get those grommets, pop them on that shock, put that mount on, tighten it, torque it, compress that spring a few times within that shock. there's the hole that we're going to fill. I think this was one of the harder parts of the whole job, was aligning these holes and getting to it and trying to thread these bolts. Just a little tricky. I couldn't quite find the angle on it, but once I did, back to tighten it up with an extension on one side. You're going to find that the driver's side's a little tighter. Tightened and then torqued, and there it is installed. Not sure how it got so scarred up, but it did. I went ahead and put in a damper while I was feeling confident, and I gotta tell you, I'm really happy with the way it turned out. I'm really happy with the feel of the car. Good luck to you guys.